The radio crackled to life at 3:47 hours, cutting through the humid Afghan night like a blade through silk. Lightning 6-1, Lightning 6-1, this is Reaper Actual. We have troops in contact, immediate close air support required. How copy? The voice carried that particular strain of controlled desperation that only came when American lives hung in the balance, when seconds stretched into eternities, and when the difference between going home and coming home in a box depended on a stranger's skill 30,000 feet above. Captain Evangelina, Prophet. Vasquez adjusted her oxygen mask and checked her weapon systems for the third time in 2 minutes. The FA-18E Super Hornet beneath her responded to every microadjustment like an extension of her own nervous system, twin engines humming with barely contained violence. Through her heads-up display, she could see the infrared signatures of friendly forces pinned down in a valley that looked like God's own kill box from this altitude. The Taliban had learned to fight smart, high ground, interlocking fields of fire, and patience that could outlast American political will. Reaper Actual, Lightning 6-1 copies all. On station with full combat load. Send your 9-line. Her voice was steady, professional, betraying nothing of the electricity coursing through her veins. Below, 8 Navy SEALs were having the worst night of their lives, and she was about to become either their guardian angel or their final witness. The forward air controller's voice came back tight and quick. Lightning, this is critical. We've got wounded can't move, taking fire from multiple positions. Need danger close, repeat danger close strikes on the ridgeline. Friendlies are marked with IR strobes. Targets are, the transmission cut to static, then returned with the sound of automatic weapons fire bleeding through. Jesus, they're everywhere. Lightning, we need you now. Prophet rolled inverted, her aircraft's nose dropping toward the earth like a falling star. Through her canopy, she could see the muzzle flashes winking like deadly fireflies in the darkness below. The SEAL's IR strobes pulsed in the predetermined pattern, but they were so close to the enemy positions that dropping ordnance would require surgical precision that pushed the envelope of human capability. One miscalculation, one gust of wind, one moment of doubt, and she'd be explaining to 8 mothers why their sons weren't coming home. What happened next would echo through the corridors of naval aviation for decades, spawning legends whispered in ready rooms from Oceana to Lemoore. But first, those SEALs had to survive the next 60 seconds, and that depended entirely on a pilot they'd never met, whose reputation preceded her like thunder before lightning. The altimeter unwound with terrifying speed as Prophet committed to her attack run, her aircraft becoming a controlled meteor screaming toward Earth at 500 knots. Through her targeting pod, she could see the enemy fighters scrambling across the rocky terrain, their heat signatures blooming white-hot against the cold mountain backdrop. The SEALs below had gone silent on the radio, either because they couldn't transmit or because they no longer could. Either possibility made her blood run cold. Reaper Actual, Lightning 6-1, commencing attack run. Heads down, heads down, heads down. She armed her weapon systems, watching as the computer calculated release parameters with mechanical indifference to the human drama unfolding below. The GBU-12 Paveway laser-guided bomb was already selected, its seeker head hungrily tracking the laser designation, painting the ridgeline where enemy muzzle flashes still flickered like deadly stars. At 12,000 feet, something impossible happened. Prophet's right hand moved from the weapon's release to her helmet, executing a perfect military salute while maintaining her dive angle with her left hand on the stick. The gesture lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough for every SEAL below to see it through their night vision, long enough for the moment to burn itself into their memories, long enough to transform what should have been a routine close air support mission into something approaching the sacred. The Taliban fighters on the ridge never saw it coming. Prophet's bomb struck the rocky outcropping with the fury of an angry god, transforming granite and earth into a brief, brilliant sunrise that illuminated the valley floor. Secondary explosions followed as cached ammunition and improvised devices detonated in a cascading symphony of destruction. When the smoke cleared, the ridge was silent, and 8 American warriors were still breathing. Lightning 6-1, Reaper actual. Good hits, good hits. Targets neutralized. The relief in the forward air controller's voice was palpable, but there was something else there too, a note of wonder, of disbelief. Did you salute us on your attack run? Prophet pulled out of her dive, her aircraft climbing back toward the star-filled sky. Negative, Reaper. Must have been a trick of the light. But even as she said it, she knew that 8 Navy SEALs would carry the memory of that salute for the rest of their lives, would tell their children about the pilot who honored them even as she delivered death from above. What they didn't know, what none of them could know, was that Prophet's salute wasn't for them. It was for the ghost riding in her backseat, the memory of her brother Marcus, who had died in this same valley 3 years earlier. His own call for close air support answered too late by a pilot who hesitated when hesitation meant death. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vasquez had been a Force Reconnaissance Marine, one of the best, until an IED turned his Humvee into twisted metal and shattered dreams. Prophet had been a Nugget pilot then, fresh out of flight school and assigned to a training squadron, watching the war from a distance while her brother fought it up close. She'd gotten the call at 200 on a Tuesday, her commanding officer's voice careful and measured as he told her that Marcus wouldn't be coming home for Christmas, wouldn't be walking her down the aisle, wouldn't be teaching her children how to throw a curveball. The investigation had been thorough and clinical. Equipment failure had delayed the close air support mission by crucial minutes. The pilot had followed procedures, done everything by the book, but the book hadn't been written for the specific hell that Marcus and his Marines had found themselves in. No charges were filed, no careers were ended, no regulations were changed. It was just war, with all its random cruelty and institutional limitations. But Prophet had made herself a promise over Marcus's flag-draped coffin. If she ever found herself in position to save someone else's brother, someone else's son, she would not hesitate. She would not let procedure override humanity. She would remember that the voices on the radio were attached to hearts that beat and dreams that mattered and families that waited for phone calls that might never come. The salute had become her ritual, her way of honoring both the living and the dead, of acknowledging the sacred trust between those who flew and those who fought on the ground. It wasn't in any manual, wasn't part of any official protocol, but it was as essential to her as breathing. Every close air support mission, every time American lives hung in the balance, Prophet would render that perfect salute before delivering her ordnance. It was her way of saying, "I see you, I honor you, and I will not fail you." The SEALs below didn't know any of this as they began their extraction, moving through the darkness with the practiced efficiency of warriors who had just been given an unexpected gift of continued existence. They didn't know about Marcus, didn't know about the promise, didn't know about the guilt that had driven Prophet to become the best close air support pilot in naval aviation. All they knew was that when death had seemed certain, salvation had come from above, preceded by a gesture of respect that elevated the entire encounter from mere survival to something approaching poetry. Word of the incident spread through the special operations community with the speed of wildfire. In a world where heroism was measured in milliseconds and margins of error were measured in inches, Prophet's salute became legend. Some called it unprofessional, a dangerous distraction during a critical phase of flight. Others saw it as the purest expression of military bearing, a reminder that technology and tactics were meaningless without the human spirit that gave them purpose. The debate raged in ready rooms and command centers, in officer clubs and enlisted barracks. Was Prophet a maverick who put style over substance, or was she something rarer, a warrior who understood that the manner of victory mattered as much as victory itself? The arguments might have continued indefinitely, might have remained academic discussions among people who measured their service in PowerPoint presentations and staff meetings, but Prophet wasn't done making her case. 3 weeks after the salute heard, round the special operations world, she found herself overhead another crisis, Another group of Americans in contact with an enemy that showed no mercy and asked no quarter. This time it was Army Rangers, 12 of them pinned down in a compound that had turned from objective to trap in the space of minutes. The mission had gone sideways when intelligence reports proved catastrophically wrong, when what should have been a simple snatch-and-grab operation became a running firefight through urban terrain that offered 1,000 hiding places for every advantage. Prophet, this is Talon 6. We are well and truly screwed down here. Multiple enemy positions, unknown number of combatants, and we've got 2 wounded who can't move. Need you to make some noise, over. The Ranger captain's voice carried the particular calm that came from accepting death while still fighting to avoid it. Professional soldiers developed that tone, the way actors develop stage presence. It was the sound of competence under pressure, of training overriding fear, of men determined to sell their lives dearly if selling them became necessary. Prophet acknowledged the transmission while scanning the target area through her sensors. The Rangers were holed up in a 3-story building, surrounded by a maze of alleyways and rooftops that could hide an army. Enemy fighters were moving through the urban terrain like water through a sieve, flowing around obstacles, finding gaps, applying pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. It was the kind of tactical nightmare that turned experienced warriors into statistics and left families with folded flags and hollow promises that their sacrifice meant something. The solution required precision that pushed the boundaries of both technology and human capability. Prophet would have to thread bombs through a needle, delivering explosive death within meters of American lives, while accounting for variables that included wind drift, building construction, enemy movement patterns, and the inherent unpredictability of high explosives in confined spaces. One slight miscalculation would transform a rescue mission into a tragedy that would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. As Prophet rolled into her attack run, descending through the night sky like an avenging angel wrapped in titanium and jet fuel, she raised her right hand in that now famous salute. But this time, something different happened. This time, she wasn't alone. Lieutenant Commander Jake Hammer Morrison had been Prophet's wingman for 6 months, had flown 37 combat missions at her side, had watched her work with the focused intensity of a master craftsman practicing an ancient art. Hammer was old-school Navy, a pilot who believed in tradition and protocol, and the chain of command that held military aviation together like gravity held the universe in place. He'd initially dismissed Prophet's salute as showboating, as the kind of unnecessary flourish that got people killed, when attention should be focused on weapons systems and targeting solutions. But 37 missions had taught him something about Prophet that no amount of briefings or reputation could have conveyed. She didn't salute for the cameras, or the glory, or the stories that would be told in bars years later. She saluted because she understood something fundamental about the covenant between those who fought in the air and those who bled on the ground. She saluted because she knew that honor was not just about completing the mission, but about how you completed it, about maintaining humanity in the midst of inhumanity, about remembering that every radio call represented someone's son, someone's father, someone's irreplaceable piece of the universe. So when Prophet raised her hand in salute, Hammer found his own hand moving to mirror the gesture. 2 pilots, 2 aircraft, 2 deadly machines controlled by human hearts that still remembered what it meant to serve something larger than themselves. The Rangers below, fighting for their lives in a maze of concrete and steel, looked up through their night vision devices and saw something that would sustain them through the longest nights of their lives. Proof that they were not forgotten, that their sacrifice was witnessed, that someone above was willing to honor them even as death rained down around them. The bombs struck with surgical precision, turning enemy positions into smoking craters while leaving the Rangers' building untouched. Secondary explosions lit up the night as weapons caches detonated, ammunition cooked off, and the urban battlefield was transformed from a trap into a gateway to freedom. When the smoke cleared, 12 Rangers were still breathing, still fighting, still able to call their mothers on Sunday and complain about the food in the mess hall. But the real victory was something more intangible, something that couldn't be measured in casualty reports or after-action reviews. The real victory was the moment when two pilots chose honor over efficiency, when they decided that some gestures were too important to abandon, when they proved that military bearing and human compassion were not contradictory, but complementary, two sides of the same coin that had been currency in the warrior's world since men first took up arms to protect what they loved. The story of the dual salute spread through the military community like ripples through still water, reaching every corner of the armed forces with the persistence of truth and the power of inspiration. In the Pentagon, generals debated whether to officially recognize or officially discourage Prophet's ritual. In forward operating bases across the world, pilots began discussing the appropriate balance between protocol and personal expression. In the deepest corners of the special operations community, warriors who had never met Prophet began to speak her name with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legends. But legends, Prophet was learning, came with their own unique set of problems. Fame in the military was a double-edged sword, bringing opportunities and scrutiny in equal measure. Every mission was now watched, analyzed, dissected by people who had never strapped on a fighter aircraft but felt qualified to judge the performance of those who did. Every decision was second-guessed, every radio transmission recorded and replayed, every bomb release scrutinized for evidence of grandstanding or genuine tactical necessity. The pressure might have broken a lesser pilot, might have driven them to abandon the very gestures that had made them famous in the first place. But Prophet had not earned her reputation through luck or accident. She had earned it through thousands of hours in the cockpit, through countless training missions flown in weather that grounded lesser pilots, through a dedication to excellence that bordered on obsession. The critics could question her methods, but they could not question her results. 0 friendly fire incidents, 0 failed missions, 0 American lives lost on her watch. Still, the weight of expectation was beginning to show. Prophet's fellow pilots noticed the subtle changes first, the way she stayed longer in the briefing rooms, studying target folders with even greater intensity than before, the way she spent extra hours in the simulator, practicing scenarios that other pilots would have considered impossible, the way she carried herself with the particular burden that came from knowing that failure was not just personal defeat but public spectacle, not just professional disappointment but national tragedy. The breaking point came on a mission that should have been routine, a simple patrol over a sector that had been quiet for weeks. Prophet was flying solo, a standard reconnaissance flight designed to show the flag and gather intelligence on enemy movement patterns. The sun was setting over the Afghan mountains, painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson that reminded her why she had fallen in love with flying in the first place. For a few precious minutes, she was just a pilot in her aircraft, alone with the sky and the eternal silence that existed between Earth and stars. Then the radio shattered the peace. Any station, this is Wolfpack 6. We have a bird down, repeat, bird down. Search and rescue required immediately. The voice was young, probably a lieutenant on his first deployment, trying to maintain composure while his world collapsed around him. A helicopter had gone down in contested territory, its crew of 4 somewhere in the wilderness below, alive or dead, safe or captured, time running out with each passing second. Prophet acknowledged the transmission and altered course toward the coordinates. Her peaceful evening transformed into a race against time and terrain, and an enemy that showed no mercy to prisoners. As she approached the crash site, she could see the scattered wreckage of the helicopter spread across a rocky hillside like broken toys. There was no sign of the crew, no radio signals, no indication whether she was flying toward a rescue mission or a recovery operation. Then she saw them, 4 figures moving slowly through the rocks, three helping carry a fourth who appeared to be injured. They were heading toward high ground, following the textbook for survival in hostile territory, but they were also heading directly toward a Taliban patrol that was converging on the crash site from two directions. The mathematics of the situation were simple and brutal. The helicopter crew would be captured or killed long before any ground-based rescue force could reach them. Prophet had weapons, but she also had a problem. The enemy fighters were too close to the downed airmen for her to use her bombs safely, and her aircraft's cannon wasn't designed for the kind of surgical precision that the situation required. She needed to buy time, to disrupt the enemy's advance without endangering the very people she was trying to save. She needed to do something that existed somewhere between tactics and inspiration, between standard operating procedure and pure improvisation. What she did next would be analyzed in staff colleges for generations, would become a case study in air power employment, and a testament to the power of human creativity under pressure. Prophet dove toward the enemy patrol, her engines screaming like banshees, and began executing a series of high-speed, low-altitude passes that violated every safety regulation in the book. She flew between mountain peaks at speeds that left no margin for error, her wingtips clearing rocky outcroppings by inches, her exhaust trails leaving contrails that wrote temporary messages across the sky. The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. The Taliban fighters, accustomed to owning the night and dominating the ground, suddenly found themselves targets in a deadly game of aerial chicken. Prophet's aircraft became a thunderbolt that could appear from any direction, its engines providing a sonic signature that made coordinated movement impossible. Every time the enemy fighters tried to advance toward the downed airmen, Prophet would materialize from behind a ridgeline, forcing them to dive for cover and disrupting their attack formation. But the most extraordinary moment came during her fourth pass, when Prophet found herself flying directly over the crash survivors. As her aircraft roared overhead at an altitude that seemed to defy physics, she raised her right hand in that familiar salute, a gesture of recognition and solidarity that bridged the gap between air and ground, between the safety of her cockpit and the deadly vulnerability of their position. The downed airmen, struggling through the rocks with their wounded comrade, looked up and saw something that would sustain them through the next 4 hours of evasion and eventual rescue. Proof that they were not alone, that someone above was watching over them, that their service and sacrifice were witnessed by a warrior who understood the brotherhood that transcended branch of service or mission assignment. Prophet's unconventional tactics bought the time that search and rescue needed to reach the crash site. All 4 airmen were eventually recovered, their survival a testament to their training, their teamwork, and their refusal to surrender even when surrender seemed like the only rational option. But their rescue was also a testament to something else, to the power of innovation under pressure, to the importance of thinking beyond standard doctrine, and to the profound impact that individual courage could have on collective outcomes. The after-action report noted Prophet's creative employment of air power assets in a non-standard tactical scenario. The official language was bureaucratic and bloodless, designed to capture facts without acknowledging the artistry involved, to document results without celebrating the human spirit that had achieved them. But the report missed the most important aspect of the entire incident: the moment when a pilot chose honor over safety, when she risked her own life not to deliver death, but to preserve life, when she proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the military arsenal was not explosive but inspirational. News of Prophet's latest exploit spread through military channels with the speed of electricity through copper wire. In the special operations community, where reputation was the ultimate currency and respect was earned in increments measured by heartbeats and decisions, Prophet's name was beginning to carry the weight of legend. She had become more than just another pilot. She had become a symbol of everything that military aviation could be when human courage and technological capability were perfectly aligned. But symbols Prophet was discovering were fragile things. They could inspire and unite, but they could also burden and isolate. Every mission now carried the weight of expectation. Every radio transmission was analyzed for evidence of the mystique that had grown up around her call sign. Other pilots began to watch her with a mixture of admiration and envy, grateful for her skills, but resentful of the attention they generated. Some questioned whether her methods were sustainable, whether the risks she took were justified by the results she achieved. The criticism stung more than Prophet cared to admit. She had never sought fame or recognition. She had simply tried to honor her brother's memory and serve the warriors on the ground with the same dedication that Marcus had shown every day of his military career. But military culture, like any culture, was complex and sometimes contradictory. It celebrated heroes while being suspicious of heroism, praised innovation while being comfortable with tradition, honored individual achievement while emphasizing team unity. Prophet found herself caught in the middle of these contradictions, trying to navigate a path between visibility and humility, between excellence and arrogance, between leadership and showboating. The balance was delicate and constantly shifting, requiring the same kind of precision that she brought to her flying, but applied to the infinitely more complex realm of human relationships and institutional politics. The resolution came from an unexpected source. General Patricia Hawkins was a fighter pilot from the old school, a woman who had broken barriers when breaking barriers required more courage than most people possessed. She had flown combat missions over Iraq in the 1990s, had commanded squadrons and air wings, had earned every star on her shoulder through competence and character rather than politics or connection. When General Hawkins requested a meeting with Prophet, it was not a request that could be declined or delayed. They met in the general's office at Bagram Airfield, surrounded by the memorabilia of a career spent in service to something larger than personal ambition. The walls were covered with photographs of aircraft and aircrews, with commendations and awards that testified to decades of excellence under pressure. But what struck Prophet most was a small frame on the general's desk, containing a photograph of a young man in marine dress blues, his smile bright and his eyes full of the confidence that came from believing in unlimited possibilities. "That's my son," General Hawkins said, noticing Prophet's attention. "Captain David Hawkins, Marine Corps. He was killed by an IED outside Fallujah in 2007. She spoke the words with the careful control of someone who had practiced them many times, who had learned to discuss the worst day of her life with the same professional bearing she brought to every other aspect of her military service. Prophet felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition that transcended rank and protocol and the artificial barriers that military hierarchy sometimes created between people. "I'm sorry for your loss, General. He looks like he was an exceptional Marine." "He was," General Hawkins replied, "and he would have loved what you've been doing up there. David always said that the best warriors were the ones who remembered that war was about people, not just tactics. He would have appreciated your salute." The conversation that followed lasted 2 hours and covered territory that ranged from flight safety to military tradition, from individual expression to unit cohesion, from the art of leadership to the science of survival. General Hawkins had not summoned Prophet to criticize or constrain her. She had summoned her to ensure that a valuable asset was supported rather than undermined, protected rather than exposed, guided rather than isolated. "The critics will always be with us," the general explained. "They serve a purpose. They keep us honest, they force us to examine our motives, they remind us that privileges must be earned and re-earned every day. But don't let them rob you of what makes you special. The salute isn't grandstanding, it's leadership. It reminds everyone involved that we're fighting for something worth dying for, something worth living for." When Prophet left the general's office, she carried with her something more valuable than any medal or commendation. The knowledge that her methods were not just tolerated but valued, not just accepted but celebrated by the leaders who understood the difference between following rules and serving principles. The conversation had not changed her tactical approach. She would continue to salute, continue to honor the warriors below, continue to push the boundaries of what was possible in the cockpit. But it had changed her confidence, had restored the certainty that her methods served a purpose larger than personal expression. The next mission came 3 days later, and it would prove to be the most challenging of Prophet's career. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target was moving through a valley system that had been a Taliban stronghold for years. The target was believed to be a bomb maker responsible for dozens of American casualties, a man whose improvised explosive devices had turned routine patrols into deadly lotteries and safe roads into killing fields. The mission profile was complex and dangerous. Prophet would be working with a joint special operations team that included elements from multiple services, each with their own communication protocols and tactical preferences. The target area was heavily defended, surrounded by anti-aircraft weapons that could turn her advanced fighter into expensive scrap metal in seconds. The weather was marginal at best, with cloud cover that limited visibility and winds that made precision bombing a matter of luck as much as skill. But the most challenging aspect of the mission was not tactical or environmental, it was personal. The Special Operations Team included a Force Reconnaissance Marine who had served with Marcus during his final deployment, who had been in the same unit, who had carried the same risks and faced the same dangers that had ultimately claimed her brother's life. Staff Sergeant Tony Rodriguez was now a team leader himself, responsible for younger Marines who looked to him for the kind of guidance and protection that Marcus had once provided. The introduction came over the radio during the pre-mission briefing. "Prophet, this is Recon 6. I served with your brother in Afghanistan. Marcus was a hell of a Marine, and he talked about his pilot sister all the time. He'd be proud of what you've accomplished." Prophet had to take a moment to steady herself, to push down the emotions that threatened to interfere with the professional focus that the mission required. Marcus had been gone for 3 years, but the pain was still fresh, still capable of ambushing her at moments when she thought she had achieved some measure of peace. Hearing his name spoken by someone who had known him, who had shared the dangers and brotherhood of combat with him, brought back all the grief and guilt and determination that had driven her to become the pilot she was today. "Copy that, Recon 6. Let's go do some good work." The mission began before dawn, with Prophet's aircraft launching into a sky still dark with night and heavy with clouds. Her sensors painted a picture of the target area that looked like a tactical nightmare. Multiple enemy positions, complex terrain, civilian populations scattered throughout the region, and weather conditions that would challenge even the most experienced pilot. The high-value target was somewhere in that maze, protected by geography and fanaticism, and the kind of tactical patience that had made the Taliban such effective guerrilla fighters. Prophet established contact with the ground team as they moved into position, their progress tracked through a combination of satellite imagery and ground-based sensors that turned the battle space into a three-dimensional chessboard. Rodriguez's voice was calm and professional as he coordinated his team's movement, but Prophet could hear the underlying tension that came from operating in enemy territory, where every shadow could hide a threat, and every decision could be the last one a person ever made. "Prophet Recon 6, we have eyes on the target compound. Multiple structures, heavy security, definitely the right place. But we've got a problem." Rodriguez's transmission carried the particular note of concern that experienced warriors recognized immediately, the sound of a plan coming apart in real time. "What's your situation, Recon 6? "Civilians. Lots of them. Looks like they're being used as human shields. We count at least 20 non-combatants in and around the target building, including women and children. This just got a lot more complicated." Prophet studied the imagery from her targeting pod, confirming what Rodriguez had reported. The bomb maker had chosen his defensive position well, surrounding himself with innocent people who would die if conventional weapons were employed against the compound. It was a tactic as old as warfare itself, as effective as it was morally reprehensible, designed to paralyze attackers who still maintained some connection to their own humanity. The tactical problem was clear: how to neutralize a legitimate military target without harming the innocent people being used to protect him. Prophet had weapons capable of destroying the entire compound, but using them would turn a counterterrorism operation into a war crime. She had smaller munitions that could strike with surgical precision, but the intelligence reports indicated that the target never separated himself from his human shields, never provided an opportunity for the kind of clean engagement that would satisfy both tactical requirements and moral obligations. Recon 6, Prophet. I need you to paint the building with your laser designator, but don't mark the main structure. Can you get a designation on the communications antenna on the roof? Affirmative, antenna is marked, but Prophet, that's not going to do much damage to our guy down there. Trust me on this one, Recon 6. Sometimes the best way to kill a snake is to cut off its head, and sometimes the best way to cut off its head is to make it stick its neck out. What Prophet had in mind was not in any tactical manual, was not part of any standard operating procedure, was not the kind of solution that would be approved by commanders who preferred predictable outcomes to creative improvisation. But it was exactly the kind of thinking that had made her legendary in the special operations community, the kind of innovation that elevated mere technical proficiency to the level of art. Prophet selected her smallest precision munition, a bomb designed for targets that required surgical accuracy rather than overwhelming destruction. But instead of aiming for the building itself, she programmed the weapon to strike the communications equipment on the roof, to sever the bomb maker's connection to his network without harming the civilians he was using as protection. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The explosion destroyed the antenna array and disabled the building's electrical systems, plunging the compound into darkness and cutting off the target's ability to communicate with his security forces. But more importantly, it created exactly the kind of chaos and confusion that would force him to make a choice: remain hidden among the civilians or emerge to assess the damage and restore his tactical situation. Prophet orbited overhead, her sensors trained on the compound, waiting for the moment when desperation would overcome caution. It took 17 minutes during which she held station in hostile airspace, 17 minutes during which enemy anti-aircraft systems tried to acquire a firing solution on her aircraft, 17 minutes during which every second stretched into an eternity of professional tension and personal determination. Then it happened. A single figure emerged from the main building, moving with the particular urgency of someone whose carefully constructed defenses had just been compromised. Prophet's targeting systems identified the man immediately. Medium height, distinctive beard, carrying what appeared to be a communication device as he moved toward a secondary building that might contain backup equipment. Recon 6, Prophet. I have positive identification on the target. He's separated from the civilians, moving to secondary structure. Request immediate confirmation for weapons release. Prophet Recon 6. Confirmed positive identification. You are cleared hot. Send it. Prophet's second bomb struck the secondary building with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, turning the structure into rubble and ending the career of a man who had devoted his life to the creation of death and the destruction of innocence. The primary building, still filled with civilians, remained untouched. The bomb maker's network, deprived of its technical expertise and tactical leadership, would be significantly degraded. Most importantly, the operation had achieved its objectives without adding to the role of innocent casualties that was the true tragedy of asymmetric warfare. But as Prophet climbed away from the target area, her mission complete and her aircraft pointed toward home, she found herself thinking not about tactical success or strategic implications, but about the moment when she had raised her hand in salute as she began her attack run. The gesture had become as natural as breathing, as automatic as checking her instruments, as essential to her identity as her call sign or her commitment to excellence. Rodriguez's voice came over the radio as his team began their extraction. "Prophet, Recon 6. Outstanding work today. Marcus would have been proud." The words were simple, unadorned by military formality or tactical necessity, but they carried the weight of brotherhood and the recognition of service that transcended individual achievement. "Copy that, Recon 6. See you on the next one." As Prophet's aircraft disappeared into the morning sky, leaving behind a successful mission and another chapter in a legend that was still being written, she carried with her the knowledge that some traditions were worth preserving, some gestures were worth maintaining, and some principles were worth defending regardless of the criticism they might generate. The salute had begun as a personal tribute to a fallen brother, but it had evolved into something larger, a symbol of the covenant between those who flew and those who fought, a reminder that honor was not just about completing the mission, but about how the mission was completed. The story of Prophet's unconventional tactics and unwavering commitment to that symbolic salute would continue to spread through military circles, inspiring some and challenging others, but always serving as a reminder that individual courage and institutional excellence were not contradictory forces, but complementary aspects of the same warrior ethos. In a profession where the margin between success and failure was often measured in milliseconds and inches, Prophet had proven that there was still room for the human spirit to flourish, still space for personal honor to coexist with professional competence. Years later, when military historians attempted to analyze the factors that had made Prophet such an effective pilot and influential leader, they would focus on her technical skills, her tactical innovation, her ability to perform under pressure. But they would miss the most important element of her success: the understanding that military service was ultimately about people, not platforms, about values rather than just victories, about the recognition that every person wearing the uniform was someone's irreplaceable piece of the universe, deserving of honor and worthy of the ultimate sacrifice that some would be called upon to make. The salute would endure long after Prophet's flying career ended, long after the specific missions were forgotten, and the individual participants had moved on to other challenges. It would become part of the unofficial tradition of close air support operations, a gesture passed down from pilot to pilot like a sacred trust, a reminder that the technology of warfare might evolve, but the humanity of warriors must be preserved. In ready rooms and briefing spaces around the world, young pilots would learn about Prophet's tactics and techniques, would study her methods and try to understand the principles that had made her legendary. But the most important lesson would not be found in any manual or taught in any classroom. The most important lesson would be whispered in the spaces between official instruction and personal inspiration. That sometimes the most powerful weapon in the military arsenal was not delivered through weapon systems, but through the simple recognition that service was not just a job, but a calling, not just a profession, but a sacred trust between those who had chosen to place themselves in harm's way and those who depended on their courage, their skill, and their unwavering commitment to something larger than themselves. The legend of Prophet and her salute would live on, carried forward by the warriors who understood that honor was not just